For 30 years, I believed in loyalty until I saw her text in my downtown Chicago apartment. At 47, I thought I understood the rules of the game. 3 decades of experience had taught me that you could lose Sarah, but you absolutely couldn't afford to lose yourself. The moment you make your future depend on someone else, you've already handed over the keys to your own existence, and that's exactly where I found myself standing in my downtown Chicago apartment, staring at a text message that would shatter everything I believed about loyalty and trust. Life is saturated with situations beyond your control, some of them slicing right through the core of your emotions, into your hopes, into your carefully constructed vision of tomorrow. One of the most devastating of these is when someone you've treasured, someone you've envisioned decades with, is already entangled with someone else. In moments like that, every fiber of your being wants to resist reality. You want to rewrite the facts, argue with the truth until it surrenders. But that's not how the world operates, and that's certainly not how you construct a life that's stable and meaningful. The first step in moving forward is to stand motionless long enough to look the situation straight in the face and admit to yourself that you don't possess the power to alter it simply because you desperately wish it to be different. Now, that's not some simple task, it's not some sterile intellectual exercise. It's an all-out war between the part of you that demands the world conform to your desires and the part that recognizes the world follows its own ruthless laws. And the thing about reality is it's absolutely merciless. It doesn't bend just because it's tearing you apart. So you have to make a choice. Keep trying to battle against the truth, or turn and face it with your shoulders squared, acknowledging that what's real is often brutally inconvenient and soul-crushing, but it's still the only foundation you can work with. You can't start constructing something better while desperately clinging to an illusion. You can't heal if you're still secretly hoping reality will flip overnight in your favor. When you accept what you cannot change, you're not surrendering in weakness. You're aligning yourself with truth, and that alignment gives you unshakable stability. It gives you solid ground. You begin to see that your pain, though razor sharp, isn't the enemy. It's the signal that something has fundamentally shifted, that a path you wanted is permanently closed. And if you stop resenting that signal and start listening to it, you realize it's directing you to channel your energy somewhere else, somewhere productive, somewhere that's actually within reach. People sometimes mistake acceptance for apathy, but it's the complete opposite. It's the bedrock for intelligent action. You can't aim properly if you don't know where you're standing. And yes, it requires tremendous courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear or pain, it's doing what's right despite those feelings burning through you. In this case, courage is looking at the truth and choosing not to turn away. It's resisting the seductive temptation of fantasy. It's understanding that your value as a human being doesn't depend on someone else choosing you, that your life isn't demolished because one possibility evaporated. You might feel like the rejection defines your worth. It doesn't. What defines you is your response to it. Do you let it shrink you, make you bitter, transform you into someone resentful and consumed by envy? Or do you let it strip away illusions so you can walk forward unburdened by false hopes? Once you face the reality, you create space for something far greater than clinging to what's already gone. You create space for profound growth, and growth doesn't mean everything feels good immediately. It often feels like you've lost more than you've gained at first. But if you keep moving, if you keep making choices that serve your long-term good instead of your short-term comfort, you'll discover that the strength you build in the process is worth infinitely more than what you lost. Because that strength will serve you not just now, but in every future challenge you'll encounter. You'll know that you can take a devastating blow, stand up, and keep going. And maybe one day you'll look back and see that this moment, this agonizing acceptance, wasn't the end of your story. It was the place where you stopped running from reality, stood your ground, and started living in a way that's actually possible, actually honest, and actually yours. When you've been rejected, or when someone you wanted is entangled with someone else, it can feel like a direct statement about your worth as a human being. It's as if the mind leaps to the devastating conclusion that if you were truly valuable, if you were truly enough, they would have chosen you. But this is a dangerous and absolutely false equation. Your value isn't handed to you by another person's approval. It's something you must recognize and cultivate from deep within, because if you outsource your worth to the choices of others, you'll spend your life chained to circumstances you can never control. Reclaiming your self-worth begins by recognizing that it may have been catastrophically misplaced. You might have poured too much of your identity into being chosen by one specific person. That's understandable. Relationships are deeply tied to our sense of belonging and significance. But the truth is, when you tie your identity to something fragile, something you don't fully control, you're setting yourself up for a complete collapse. Your self-worth has to be anchored in something absolutely unshakable. Your character, your integrity, your ability to improve, the way you carry yourself in the world. These are the things no one can take from you unless you hand them over willingly. Confidence, in this sense, isn't some puffed-up illusion about being superior to everyone in every room. It's a deep trust in your ability to meet life exactly as it is. That means you stop measuring yourself only by how others respond to you and start measuring yourself by your own actions, by the commitments you keep to yourself. You build confidence the same way you build muscle, through repeated, deliberate effort. You've been knocked down emotionally. The first step back isn't to wait for someone else to validate you. It's to take a single meaningful action that affirms your own agency. Hit the gym, master a skill, keep a promise to yourself. Every time you do, you're proving to yourself that you can rely on you. This is crucial because life will keep testing your sense of worth. If it's fragile, if it's dependent on external approval, you'll be vulnerable every time circumstances shift. But if you've invested in becoming someone competent, disciplined, and self-respecting, those tests won't destroy you. They'll refine you. You'll know that rejection doesn't make you worthless any more than rain makes the ocean disappear. You'll know that someone else's choice says more about their preferences and their path than it does about your intrinsic value. Reclaiming self-worth also involves removing the poison of comparison. When you're fixated on who someone else is with, it's easy to create an idealized version of them in your mind and then measure yourself against it. But that's an unfair and distorted game, one you're guaranteed to lose because you're comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's highlight reel. Your focus must return to your own path, your own progress. That's where confidence lives. Not in the illusion of being better than someone else, but in the reality of being better than you were yesterday. When you take your worth back into your own hands, you stop living at the mercy of other people's choices. You become grounded in the knowledge that you have value because you act in ways that make you valuable to yourself, to your community, to the future you're building. And that confidence, once rebuilt, will carry you far beyond this moment of loss into a life where you walk with your head high, not because someone else gave you permission, but because you earned it. Letting go is one of the most difficult psychological tasks you will ever face, and it becomes exponentially more complicated when your emotions are entangled with disappointment, betrayal, or rejection. The human mind has a vicious tendency to cling to what it has invested in, even when holding on causes excruciating suffering. That clinging isn't just emotional, it's neurological. Your brain has built pathways around the person or the idea you've lost, and breaking those connections feels absolutely unnatural. But to move forward, you have to understand that holding on out of resentment or bitterness doesn't protect you. It traps you. It keeps you tied to the very thing you need to be free from. Bitterness, at first, can feel like strength. It's that surge of defiance, that inner voice saying you'll never forget what was done to you. But over time, it corrodes from the inside. Bitterness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person suffers. It doesn't wound them the way it wounds you. The psychology of letting go without bitterness begins with realizing that the only way to reclaim your future is to stop feeding the story that cast you as a permanent victim. That doesn't mean pretending nothing happened or excusing what was wrong. It means refusing to let that wrongness dictate the shape of the rest of your life. A key step in this process is reframing the experience. Instead of viewing it solely as something that was stolen from you, see it as a challenge that revealed who you are and what you need to strengthen. This shift doesn't change the facts, but it changes the way those facts live inside you. You stop rehearsing the injustice and start mining the lesson. Your mind starts to recognize that even devastating loss can be a form of guidance, pointing you toward paths you might not have considered otherwise. When you adopt that perspective, you begin to cut the emotional ties in a way that feels less like amputation and more like release. Forgiveness, in this sense, is not about giving someone else a gift. It's about giving yourself one. It's deciding that your energy is too valuable to be spent on keeping old wounds festering. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve the peace that comes from no longer being defined by the event. You stop replaying conversations that will never happen. You stop looking for apologies that may never come. And you stop needing the past to change before you can start living in the present. This kind of letting go requires tremendous self-discipline. The mind will try to return to the familiar grooves of resentment. When that happens, you redirect it. You replace the thought of how unfair it was with an action that makes your life better today. You write, you train, you work, you create anything that builds rather than destroys. Over time, those new actions form new pathways in your brain, and you find that the old bitterness has less room to grow. In the end, letting go without bitterness is not a single moment of decision. It's a daily practice of choosing freedom over chains. It's the recognition that the best revenge, if you even want to call it that, is not proving the other person wrong, but proving yourself strong. And when you reach that point, you don't just walk away from the past. You walk toward a future that is no longer shadowed by it. Heartbreak feels like an ending, but if you're willing to examine it closely, it can also be the beginning of something far more important than the relationship you've lost. When you're in the middle of it, everything seems colored by absence. Your routines feel hollow, your energy is drained, and the future looks blurred. But beneath the emotional chaos lies a choice. You can either let this experience reduce you into a smaller, more closed-off version of yourself, or you can use it as a crucible to forge a stronger, wiser you. The difference between those two outcomes isn't luck. It's the way you interpret and respond to what has happened. Pain has a way of exposing the truth about who you are and what you've been relying on. If you've placed too much of your stability, your happiness, or your identity in another person, heartbreak will make that painfully obvious. This can feel like a cruel revelation, but it's also a gift because once you see where you've been leaning too heavily, you have the opportunity to rebuild your foundation on something unshakable: your own values, your skills, your discipline, your vision for your life. Growth often starts where comfort ends, and heartbreak has a way of tearing you out of comfort whether you want it to or not. The process begins by refusing to waste the pain. It's tempting to numb it, to distract yourself until it fades, but that robs you of the clarity that only comes when you sit with discomfort and ask what it's trying to teach you. Maybe it's showing you patterns you've repeated in relationships. Maybe it's revealing gaps in your personal development, things you need to learn, strengthen, or change before you can truly connect with someone in a healthy way. This kind of honest self-reflection is difficult because it requires you to admit your part in what happened without slipping into self-blame. It's not about punishing yourself. It's about arming yourself with understanding so you can make better choices in the future. Turning heartbreak into growth also means channeling the energy of loss into action instead of spiraling into stagnation. You direct your attention toward meaningful goals. You take up challenges you've been avoiding. You push yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally to step into new spaces. When you do this, you're not just distracting yourself. You're actively building a self that can carry more weight, withstand more storms, and still stand tall. The resilience you gain here is not temporary. It becomes part of your character, and it will serve you in every area of life. And perhaps most importantly, heartbreak can teach you how to love without losing yourself. If you grow through it, you come to understand that a relationship is not a place to hide from life's challenges, but a partnership between two people who are already standing on their own. You realize that your happiness can't be entirely dependent on someone else's presence, and that real connection comes from two complete individuals choosing to walk together, not from one person trying to complete the other. When you treat heartbreak as a lesson rather than a life sentence, you transform it into fuel. You leave behind the version of yourself that was defined by loss and step into the version that is defined by strength, wisdom, and a renewed sense of purpose. And once you've made that transformation, you carry with you a quiet confidence, the knowledge that even in the face of pain, you have the power to grow into someone stronger than you were before. One of the most liberating but challenging steps you can take after heartbreak is deciding to build a future that doesn't depend on Sarah. When you've tied so much of your vision for tomorrow to one person, it's easy to feel like their absence erases the entire blueprint. That's an illusion. The truth is, your life's meaning and potential were never supposed to be contingent on another individual's presence. A healthy relationship can complement your path, but it should never replace the need for your own. If you base your future entirely on someone else, you've already surrendered control of your direction. And the moment they're gone, you're left stranded without a map. The first step in creating a future independent of Sarah is reclaiming authorship of your life story. That means looking at the dreams, ambitions, and projects you may have put on hold or reshaped to fit the relationship. Some of these may have been good compromises at the time, but now you need to revisit them with fresh eyes. Ask yourself, what would my future look like if it was designed solely around my highest potential rather than around keeping someone else close? The answers might unsettle you, but they'll also awaken parts of yourself you've neglected. A future that doesn't depend on Sarah is built on foundations you control: your skills, your character, your daily habits, your capacity to adapt and grow. You have to shift your focus from hoping she will be part of your plans to ensuring that your plans are strong enough to stand whether she's there or not. That means doubling down on personal development. It means learning, training, refining, and pushing yourself toward mastery in areas that matter to you. Every skill you develop, every habit you strengthen, is a brick in the structure of a life that stands on its own. And here's the paradox. The more you invest in becoming a complete and capable individual, the more attractive and fulfilling your life becomes, not just to potential partners, but to you. When you have a vision for your future that excites you, you're no longer at the mercy of someone else's decisions. You move through the world with purpose, and that purpose shields you from the despair that comes when a relationship ends. You stop asking who will walk with you and start focusing on building a path worth walking, regardless of who joins you. This doesn't mean you cut yourself off from love or connection. It means you approach those connections from a place of strength rather than need. When your future doesn't depend on Sarah, you can love more freely because you're not clinging out of fear of losing your entire foundation. If a relationship ends, it will hurt, but it won't dismantle your identity or rob you of your direction. Your life remains intact because it was never built entirely around someone else to begin with. You also have to make peace with uncertainty. A future independent of Sarah is not about guaranteeing outcomes. It's about preparing yourself to thrive regardless of them. That requires resilience, and resilience is built by facing challenges voluntarily, by putting yourself in situations that test your abilities and force you to grow. Every time you step into discomfort and come out stronger, you're proving to yourself that you can handle whatever comes, with or without Sarah. Ultimately, building a future that doesn't depend on Sarah is about self-respect. It's about valuing your potential enough to invest in it fully, rather than leaving it hostage to circumstances you can't control. When you take ownership of your path, you no longer see relationships as the foundation of your life, but as companions on a journey you've chosen for yourself. And once you reach that point, you realize that your future isn't something that can be given or taken by anyone else. It's something you create, one deliberate step at a time. When you finally understand that your worth and your destiny are in your own hands, you stop waiting for someone else to define them. You start building a life so strong, so meaningful, that whether Sarah's in it or not, it remains whole. And so do you.